support my tongue. You will never be the same.
And with the full catastrophe, he didn't mean it was all bad.
God that I worship has a way of saying, don't play with me.
I invite you to the dance with the Lord of the dance.
God didn't call America to do what she's doing in the world now.
Please dance.
Hey there, and welcome to Untitled, a new video service?
Series?
Kind of.
Series?
Series?
Probably better.
Either way,
Videos.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm Pastor Tim from Unfailing Love Church, Fort Wayne, here in Fort Wayne, Indiana.
I'm Pastor Mallory.
My lovely wife.
Hi.
And we're actually starting up a new collaborative video series with this guy right here.
Yeah, and I am Reverend Don Van Antwerpen of Unfinished Community. We got an thing going on here, working pretty well. I'm liking that.
Yeah.
Feeling the groove.
We
with
called
that.
the Untitled.
Yeah, exactly. And it works out beautifully. My community is located in the wild depths of the internet for the most part. But we also have a physical location here in that wonderful city of Hyogo, Kobe, Japan. So we're all on the other side of the world. But
yeah, 13-hour difference.
I know, but that means that my mornings are your evenings and vice versa, which makes it a whole lot of fun.
Yeah, exactly.
Fun is subjective.
Hey, fun for me, fun for you, fun for all, 8 or 9 other people who watch this. That's good enough for me.
Yeah.
Hey, if 8 or 9 people watch it, then it's 8 or 9 more than we would have had if we didn't post it.
Exactly. So what we're doing here is basically we've each been doing video series to our respective communities for a while. And so we come from, and we'll talk about this in a minute, like the two sides of the screen here come from very different backgrounds, but have very similar goals. Like Tim and Mallory, as your community knows, you guys come from a very strong evangelical background and have been kind of clawing your way out of that. For which
clawing, kicking, screaming, all of that.
Yeah.
And I came about it very much the other way. Is I'm born and raised Protestant, hardcore, regular, very Central American, center of American, not Central American Protestant.
Yeah, right.
Two different things.
Yeah, no, not from Central America. No, not trying to take that. No. And I grew up in that. I went to school, got all my degrees, did my education, went to Princeton, got ordained as, a proper Protestant pastor. And am in that way, I guess you could say, representative of the core of mainstream Christianity, and I'm going to lay this one out here, particularly for because I know from what we've talked about with your community. The core of mainstream Christianity is not the same thing as evangelical Christianity, which is, and I really want to point this out, a small cadre of people way outside of what the center of Christianity is.
We're learning that.
Yeah, they're just very loud.
Yeah. The squeaky wheel gets the right to ruin entire societies. Okay, whatever.
Apparently.
Clearly.
Yeah, that's a thing. So that brings us to kind of what we're meaning to do here is to both of us, right? We've been on a mission to kind of detoxify Christianity for folks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Going from different angles, but that's the goal. So we are going to revert to the lectionary, which for those of you who don't know is a tool us pastor folk use to figure out what scripture to teach from week to week. We're going to start dredging up that dusty old Bible book and start talking about how God doesn't really hate you. The Bible doesn't really hate you. And actually, we're all pretty happy with who you are and we like you and other things that Mr. Rogers said far more eloquently than I ever did.
Exactly. And for those of you that don't know what the lectionary is, don't feel bad because neither did we until a couple of weeks ago.
It's like a month.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's there's a lot here and this is the theme of what we're talking about. There is a lot about the Christian faith, about tools for Christian spiritual and Bible practice that were never taught to a lot of people because certain individuals who wanted to exercise social or environmental control over you and others realize that if they taught you these things, they wouldn't be able to control you or to manipulate you or to put you in your place or to have their central hold on power.
Right.
So those of you who are probably from your community who don't know me may have some feelings about, a very straight, cis-het, white, male, American, mainline Christian pastor getting here to tell you things. Yeah, I don't blame you.
Guys, it's okay. He's cool.
Yeah.
He's cool.
I try to be, but I make no attestations about my own
cool.
I'm as cool as global warming permits me to be anyway.
Yeah.
It's fine. They expect those caliber jokes from me too.
Yeah.
So don't worry.
It works. So, this is something that I think is a point I want to start out on then, is that what a pastor is and does is something many of you have experience with, but the experience you have isn't actually correct about that, because most of the pastors in evangelical Christianity are people that exist at the center of community like black holes for social privilege, prestige, and power. They are the keepers of the secrets. They have access to all of the power that is the Bible, and you must do what they say, as they say, when they say, how they say, in order to have access to the special spiritual power that is the Jesus dude. Which
exactly,
which is not what a pastor is. That's what a cult leader is.
Correct.
Exactly.
Yeah. A pastor is meant to be someone who facilitates the dissemination of information about God, who does everything in their power to help those in the community experience God's love, to be affirmed and accepted and seen for who and what they truly are, and loved as such within the community. A pastor is typically spending most of their time teaching about a lot of the things we're going to teach about in this series: biblical tools, how to understand the Bible, how to learn and see what God is and where God's doing in it, but also goes around and spends time sitting with people who are hurting, visiting people in hospitals where that is legally appropriate. Doesn't work so well out here in Japan because Christianity doesn't have the same priorities out here. We'll say that. You can't slap on a dog collar and walk into a hospital here without comment. I'll tell you that.
That's fair.
But a pastor is someone who spends most of their time coordinating whatever resources they can to make life better, more helpful, and more loving for the people in their community. One of the pastors I trained with back in New Jersey spends most of his time running an affordable housing corporation, resettling refugees, stuff like that. And that's actually what all of us who take that big P word to heart are meant to be.
Right, exactly.
That chunk of rant is all just to indicate that I understand the trepidation some of you may feel. I feel the same thing every morning when I get up, look in the mirror, and I'm like, oh, who the heck is that guy? God, not another white dude. Oh, wait, that's...
Oh, no!
No, you 100% covered exactly how we feel about pastoral care.
Yeah.
It's that's exactly why we do what we do.
Yeah.
Is I show up I do TikTok lives a lot. Is kind of our thing right now, and I can interact with a community online, and it's so amazing how many people come in, see that it's a Christian TikTok, and they're like, oh, well, I'm gonna get judged, and then they come in and it's, holy crap, if there were more pastors like you, I might still be in church. And then the evangelical conservative church wonders, well, why are people leaving the church? Maybe if you didn't tell them they were going to hell every 3 seconds, you might have a better time.
Yeah. And that is, I promise we're going to dig into the Bible at some point, but talking about all these stuff is important too. This is something you and I discussed in our first conversation that I think is important for people to identify, is what I call the parasite. Remember that?
Yeah.
So within particularly American Christianity, we have what I call the parasite, which is this knotted mess of kind of brutalist theologies, heresies, and things that the church has rejected soundly over thousands of years that have all, like, including things like the belief in a literal rapture and the existence of hell as a place where God sends people to be tormented. None of this is in the Bible. None of this is generic Christian theology or practice, but it's all kind of come from different cult sources and stuff, knotted together over the last couple hundred years. And then about 50 or 60 years ago, the Republicans in America's political system took one look at this kind of knot of twisted, weird, backwards theologies, grabbed a handful of Pentecostalism and said, all right, we're going to jam all this together, and we're going to spend the next 30 years saying publicly, this is what it means to be Christian. And if you're not on board with this, you're not on board with us, and you're not on. And so being Republican means being Christian, means being this particular brand of crazy. And so that's been publicly promoted in American discourse as what it means to be Christian, when in reality, it's a collection of all of these heresies, outliers, and weird-ass theologies that the church has fundamentally kicked out years and years and years ago. But now it's taken on a life of its own. That was the source of what we now modernly call evangelicalism, the non-denominational church movement, things like that, was based around this political pressure to kind of use this quote-unquote Christianity to gain and maintain a voter base who would vote because they believed in a faith, not because they believed in particular policies. Because I think we all know, if you believed in particular policies that benefited anybody, you wouldn't be voting for the rich white people.
Right, exactly.
You know, so that happened, and that would be, I'm not going to say fine, but manageable if it were its own thing. But because of the connection between religious structure and government structure and wider culture, it started seeping into everywhere else, which is why you can go to, like, I'm particularly denominationally of the Reformed Church in America, which if there happens to be anyone, I know my audience already knows this because they're my side of things, have been talking to me for a while. If any of you, your guys know what that is, then you may have heard of the fact that my denomination is currently in the process of dividing, as a lot of them are, over the issues of accepting LGBTQ people as, well, you know, human. And
crazy.
I know it's such a crazy idea. Who would have thought? But so like, and that happened because this is a thing that wasn't a question for most of the existence of our denomination. Like, it would come up once in a while. People would be like, that dude's gay. And like, they'd respond to it culturally, but the church wouldn't really have an input on it because, like, there's nothing in the Bible that talks about that. Why would that be something we bother with? But as that parasite has grown and spread out into the culture, suddenly religious folk in every side of Christianity are starting to believe this mess. So, you know, I've been involved in trying to scrub the parasite out of my own denomination, but I am quite willing to take the fight to wherever it happens to be getting its noodly tendrils involved.
Right. And that's where we came in when, you know, I met you on Reddit. It's a, you know, fantastic world of the internet. And just learning that basically there was so much more to my faith, which is a weird thing to say because, you know, coming from the parasite, they were adding things that weren't really there. But in essence, it was more than what we knew.
Not only just more, it was different than what we knew. Like, after our first conversation, you looked at me and you're just like, did you know that denominations aren't all bad? And we were literally mind blown. Like, because we're taught growing up that you don't want to be part of a denomination.
Because they're going to control you. But, you know, the controller is not going to tell you.
Exactly, right? Like, the abusive spouse isn't going to say, well, you know, other people might be nicer to you than I am. They're going to say, like, all other men are terrible and I'm the best thing that's ever happened to you. Like, it's the same playbook.
Exactly.
It's literally, it's the same book with a different cover on it.
It's literally gaslighting 101.
Right. And this is the same thing I told you from the beginning. You know, denominations are, you know, they have certain identities to them, and we have beliefs and things like that in common. We have beliefs that are different from each other. I've been through several of them myself. I've done my pastoral accreditation in the RCA, but I also did almost all of it in the Presbyterian Church as well. Like, I went through all of their process. I didn't complete my training in the Presbyterians because as more liberal of a denomination they are, the Presbyterian I was working with had some real issues with race, and I spent a lot of time dealing with the Japanese community, and so it didn't work out.
Yep.
Everybody's got their thing.
Yeah, so
you know, so we couldn't come eye to eye on that. So I went back home and it worked out. But the this if you've grown up in a belief that denominations are these kind of lockstep identity boxes, you have to stay inside 100%, then that already sounds really weird to you, of a pastor kind of just bouncing around, picking and choosing, like, oh, I want to be this one, I want to be this one. The way I explained it to you when we talked about this back when we first started talking, I think is the best way to look at it. A denomination is a toolkit.
Yeah.
We're all approaching the same God together. Like when I was growing up, I existed kind of on the border between the RCA and its sister denomination, the Christian Reformed Church, which at the time, the only major difference was that I ever knew between them was we take communion on different days of the month. And that was like, people got arguments about that. People got, fiery about that once in a while, but that was really the only difference. And when you talk to the pastors about it, like, yeah, it's just easier for them to do it that way. It's easier for us to do it that way. We have our own bylaws, rules, and structures that made it so we can't. So they branched off and went their own way. Historically, now I know there was a lot more to do about that split that had to do with like Freemasonry and other weird stuff like that. American culture, it's a hornet's nest of crazy. But in practice, these denominations are just that, like, they're tool sets. I'm with the RCA not because I believe in absolutely everything that's in RCA theology. Heck, when I was getting ordained, one of the final questions was, what's the one thing that we hold dear in Reformed theology that you just can't buy into? And then when I explained that, because I'm nothing if not truthful to my own detriment,
agreed.
The examiner then turned around and asked the room full of old, experienced, extremely academic pastors, doctors, and seminary officials. All right, everybody who also has trouble believing the thing he just mentioned, stand up, and like 3/4 of the room stands up. Like, like nuanced theology and doctrine and stuff like that, we don't all buy into it the same way, and it's not meant to be constraining on us. They're meant to be a toolbox. And the same goes for like the parliamentary rules and stuff that we use and stuff like that. Like, yeah, we all follow rule sets because that's how you get humans to work together in groups. And if you're feeling constrained by
society,
exactly, if you're feeling constrained by the beliefs, you're feeling constrained by the rules or something like that, then either you don't know how to use them or you're in the wrong place. And neither of those is a bad thing.
Right.
Yeah, definitely.
It's accepting how to fix it for yourself.
I was gonna say both of those are fixable.
Yeah,
exactly. The one thing that I think every sane denominational pastor and every non-denominational evangelical nut job will have in common in their belief practice is the fact that denominations were not something Jesus created.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah, it may surprise you to hear that, but denominational folk, we also know this.
What?
Crazy. I know.
I spent a whole day just being like, and you are this, and you are this.
Yeah.
The org chart came out.
You read the Great Commission and understand that God did not say, go ye and make Presbyterians of all nations. Like, we know what it actually is. Like, we're not blind here. We get it. They're human developed tool sets that we brought together because they're useful to keeping people working together.
Right.
That's
it. We're not the Son of God. We don't have that understanding set in our in our stockpile. We're not quite there.
Don't let the glorious beards fool you. We're not Jesus.
No.
You guys are dorks.
We're a little too light for that, Don.
That's also true.
I don't know. I might have a shot if I lose a surprisingly unhealthy amount of weight of aiming for jacked Republican Jesus one of these days.
Hey,
that's true.
We both need a little bit of a tan. That's just really all it is.
Yeah, like
there you go.
And this is all these conversations, and this is the reaction we get.
Yeah, exactly.
It's all good.
So
sanity, us.
And I haven't made a single Star Trek joke yet. So, like, what are we even doing?
I'm very proud of you.
I said that, I don't know if I've told you guys this, but I once served temporarily as the lead pastor for the oldest Reformed church in the United States. And
awesome.
during that time, which was about 8 months, I was actually supposed to be their lead pastor, but then I was called out here instead. That was a tough one. Anyway, during that period of time, I recognized, like, as I was coming into the position, that there were a lot of other geeks, old geeks, like we're talking like fans of 1960s, Shatner fan Star Trek geeks, in my congregation. So every single sermon, this was a challenge to me to see if I could do it. Every single sermon title was a Star Trek reference for 6 months, just to see if I could pull it off and not make it forced. Like, make it sound like a legit sermon titles. Like, my goodbye sermon was entitled The Sunrise of a New World, taken from Kirk's funeral speech in Star Trek II.
Yes.
Like, that's how I roll, man. Like, so you say I'm a geek, I take that proudly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yes, you do.
Every time.
Every time.
It's great.
So speaking of things to geek out about, should we talk about the Bible?
Probably.
I think we really should.
Probably a good idea.
Yeah, that should probably come up at some point. So I'll explain this real quick for those on your side who haven't heard me rant about what a lectionary is. That's what we're going to shift to for this video series. We're going to start pulling mostly from the lectionary. Now, the lectionary is a tool that was developed by pretty much everybody in mainstream Christianity. It's not unique to one denomination. There is a variation of it that the Catholics use, which is why, like, when you looked at today's lectionary reading, you saw Sirach. Like, that's not in the Protestant canon.
Right.
But the Catholics got a couple extra books because they've been around longer. Their library's a bit bigger. Go figure. So
right.
Yeah. You know, that's how it is. You accumulate books. So the lectionary is a tool that kind of everybody got together and decided, okay, like, we don't have to use this. Like, this isn't something that we're all obliged to do. But we're going to make an entire 3-year cycle of text readings that allows us to hit all of the main points of the Bible, all of the things that really need to be talked about. Because, and I know this may shock you to hear, some of that stuff we don't really need to bother with. Like, in the series that my community is doing, Back to Basics, we're starting from the beginning of Genesis, working our whole way through. And let me tell you, every time we get to a chapter full of begats, we're like, oh God, we can't do a whole video on this.
That's fair.
It's like, it started here, ended here. That's all you need to know.
Yeah. Like, it starts with Adam, it gets all the way to Terah. Now we're talking about Abram. Okay, let's just move on. It's names. You got its names.
Yeah. Right.
Like, so there is a lot of stuff in there that we don't really need to read every week. So the lectionary is a 3-year cycle of texts that we all generally, when we need to, stick to. Like, if you've got something on your heart that your congregation needs to hear from elsewhere, you're not bound to it. You go out and you preach from something else. But this is why, if you pop into any old Protestant church on a Sunday, or, for example, if you're doing something ridiculous like me, popping into several dozen Protestant churches on a Sunday because you just like around. You want to do the Whitman sampler of Protestantism. I'm not going to judge. But
you always find the one that's coconut. It's awful.
Yeah, well, I'm aiming for a little bit of the Irish cream in mine, so we'll see. So, but if you go to all these different churches, you'll notice that something like 80% of them are preaching from the same scripture passages. It's because we're all using the lectionary for the most part, because we don't, like, as a pastor who should be doing other stuff during their week, you don't have time to sit down with the Bible and say, okay, I'm going to start at Genesis, I'm going to flip through until I find what God's calling me to. That's not how you do it. I don't have time to do that every week. And as also may surprise you, most of us don't have the Bible memorized, like, at all.
What?
Like, there's so many people that are shocked by this for some reason every time they get, like, there's people that get on our lives that just think, well, I'm going to throw this verse out and he's just going to quote it at me, and if not, he's clearly a false teacher. I'm like, no, I just don't want to memorize 66 books in a row.
And like also 4 or 5 of those the other day.
Yeah.
To be clear, and I'll put on my extreme academic arrogance hat here for a minute. Like, I am not an unlettered individual. Like I have,
Right.
I have 3 different college degrees. I got a bachelor's degree. I've got a master's in education. I have a master's in divinity from Princeton. All right. Like
Right.
I have,
just that photo.
I shouldn't, let me be clear. I shouldn't, but I do. Like, you know, I'm a poor kid who never should have made it out of college. I don't know how I want it. I got it. And let me tell you, I always have to look. I don't have this stuff memorized. Like I'm constantly getting like. I was talking to someone about the story of Onam the other day, which may come up again later. Hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And I'm like, crap, what book was that in? And I look at it, I'm like, oh, that's Genesis? I could have sworn that was like Kings or some shit. Like, that's a semi-major story. Like, you know,
right.
Yeah, memorizing the scripture. I'm going ahead. I'll drop the hot take here. All right, memorizing the scripture in English is a worthless spiritual practice unless it does something for you internally. That like really represents you personally. In which case, hey, more power to you. I ain't gonna judge you for whatever floats your boat, man. But like in terms of actually bringing you closer to an understanding of the Bible or God, it is utterly and completely worthless. Why? Which Bible are you memorizing? Let's just start with that question.
Right.
Like,
right.
What year was it written? What translation are you using?
Yeah.
Who wrote it down?
Like, because
all those things.
I tell you, I will quote from the book of Exodus here. This is one that I have memorized. I don't remember the exact chapter and verse, and because it's the 10 Commandments, you think I should, but I don't. I know it's in the book of Exodus. And I'm going to say from the 1619 Wicked Bible. My one of my personal favorites here.
Yes, we've talked about
we've talked about this one before. Is that the Bible is literally true and accurate in all of its translations. Okay, how's your relationship with your wife? Because the 1619 Wicked Bible, full-on translation, printed, released by the church, they all signed off on it, only to find out that it's missing a single word, and that word is not. And the word not is located in the line, thou shalt not commit adultery. So if all translations are literal, accurate, in the God-breathed word, then you have been commanded to sleep around. Have fun with
that. Yeah. That's a you thing, I guess.
There you go.
Yeah. In the event my wife's actually watching this, no, we don't take the Wicked Bible series.
No.
That is not.
My wife is right here. Yeah. No, we don't take the Wicked Bible seriously.
Yeah. But that's my point, is memorizing stuff, taking it literally in that way is an exercise in futility. It's an exercise in stupidity, and it's an exercise in futile stupidity. So maybe don't do that.
Yes.
Anyway, do you want to read the Bible at us?
Yeah, go. Read the Bible.
Yeah, I will absolutely read the Bible verse. It is Hebrews 13, starting in verse 1. And we are going through, I believe we said verse 9, correct? Yep. All right. So it's, let mutual love continue. Do not neglect to show hospitality for strangers, for by doing that, some have entertained angels without knowing it. Remember those who are in prison, as though you were in prison with them, those who are being tortured, as though you yourselves were being tortured. Let marriage be held in honor by all, and let the marriage bed be kept undefiled, for God will judge fornicators and adulterers. Keep your lives free from the love of money, and be content with what you have. For he has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. So we can say with confidence, the Lord is my helper. I will not be afraid. What can anyone do to me? Remember your leaders, those who spoke the word of God to you. Consider the outcome of their way of life and imitate their faith. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday and today and forever. Do not be carried away by all kinds of strange teachings, for it is well for the heart to be strengthened by grace, not by regulations about food.
There's like 3 words left.
Oh, which have not benefited those who observe them.
There you go.
I missed that part.
Oh,
There's the little like notation thing, and it threw me off. I thought it was
I'm looking at the same thing. When I first read it, I missed that part too. I do. For those of you following along, it was originally supposed to be verses 1 through 8. We added verse 9 because we love the mic drop there.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's a good one. So Normally, what I do when we're going to talk about the scripture is I'll give a little bit of background, and then I will open the floor to questions, as it were. As the one who's done my time, 10 years of it in the seminary, Harry Potter.
Right, yeah.
I'm happy to take the lead on the more academic distinctions here, if that works for you guys.
I like it.
All right.
Yeah.
Hand it over.
So the first piece I want to give you is, what do you know about the book of Hebrews? Like the book itself.
Honestly, I don't remember a lot from growing up.
I remember it's a letter.
By who, to who do you know?
I believe it's from Paul, correct? This is one of Paul's letters.
Oh,
dang it.
You were debating about that the other day.
It's that whole evangelical thing. They don't actually tell you what any of this is. They just tell you follow it.
Yeah, and they'll often use the word epistle so that they can kind of use a big word to detract from the fact that you're reading someone else's mail. Like this, these aren't like this is, by the way, that's the first thing my New Testament studies professor said to me when we're talking about the epistles. Just remember, you're reading somebody's mail. Like this isn't.
A good way to look at it,
yeah,
which is a felony.
yeah, a little bit. It is worth noting that there are some questions about the book of Hebrews as to whether it actually is an epistle or not, even at all. Like it may just be an accounting of some sermon that, because there isn't the beginning part that you would have in a letter isn't there in this one, the greetings type part. The ending part is. So it's possible that someone might have just tagged that ending to make it look like a letter. It is generally thought that this is not written by Paul, but kind of copies his style a bit. There are a lot of the epistles, the apostolic writings, they're called, which aren't actually letters from Paul, but a lot of churches tend to just pretend they are, which really makes no sense. Like that includes
selling the fake coach verse
a little bit.
Yeah.
So you get things like Hebrews, 2 Peter. You've got the Catholic epistles, which are also not by Paul, and that includes. I'm looking through my book here to make sure that I get the correct list of which is which.
Right.
The Catholic epistles are James, 1 Peter, 1st and 2nd John. So like none of those are Paul.
We were told they were.
Yeah, we were told almost the entire New Testament was written by Paul.
Our childhood is a lie.
Yeah, no, the first chunk of the New Testament is written by Paul, but one thing that's worth remembering about the ancient world is they didn't understand what fanfic was yet. So like a lot of this stuff, like most of the second half of the New Testament are basically Pauline fanfic leading into just general Christian fanfic, which isn't like to say bad. Like, it's still good for the most part.
It's just funny.
It's in the Bible for a reason, but like if you look at Revelation, for example, which I'm sure we'll get to at some point, because holy God, talk about books that have been mistaken by that side of the church. The revelation of St. John the Divine is basically the return of Final Fantasy VII fanfic, which lest you think I am actually referencing a fanfic I read when I was in middle school. Anyway,
never.
Yeah, lest you question my credentials. For those of you who are listening, you probably didn't notice. For those of you who are watching, you probably noticed an interesting cross-dissolve fade into us doing something totally different. The reason for that is we had a lot more to talk about than we expected.
We're a little long-winded.
Chatty Cathy.
Yeah, it is an issue that happens when you get pastors talking. We tend to not stop. So this video has definitely run a bit longer than we intended. So what we've done is we've divided it into two parts. So if you're seeing this message, you've gotten to the end of part 1. Congratulations.
Please flip the tape over for side B.
Right. Please flip the tape over and check the links in the description for various websites, Discord servers, etc. We'll talk more about those at the end of the actual video. In the meantime, as I have implied here, please tune in next week for the exciting conclusion to today's video.
Part 2.
What happens? We don't know.
What happens? Does the Bible suddenly turn out to be a hateful tool of oppression, or have people still continued to misunderstand it? Spoiler alert, people continue to misunderstand it.
Yep.
Crazy. Check it out next week, though.
Yeah, check it out next week. We will see you in either 5 minutes from our perspective or in a week from yours. Have a good week. See y'all later.
See ya.